Please don't make another video criticising the school system. Some of your best friends are teachers, and most of the people nearest and dearest to you send their children to school. And let's not forget those comments you got on the last video criticising the school. I encourage you to leave the teaching to the professional. I don't like homeschool parents. You're taking on a massive amount of responsibility that you are, frankly, incapable of handling. You think you're better than yous. You had me fully engaged up until your diversity and inclusion black people shtick. Racist. You think you have a thick skin, but you're really not made out for internet criticism. Who are you to have an opinion anyway? Your children have never even been to school. Just keep your nose out of it. Honestly, there's already enough over-opinionated people on the internet giving their views that nobody asked for. Don't add to the noise. They just keep coming to me, and once I see them, I can't unsee them, and I have to get them out of my head. So here we go. This is the first one. Okay. Number one normalised school thing that I consider could be damaging. See how I'm choosing my words wisely here? I'm proud of me. These things are gonna broadly fall under the same category of why I think they are wrong, and that should become clear as we go throughout. So the first normalised school thing that I consider to be damaging to some children is something that I've only recently become aware of, but I understand they've actually been going for a lot of years. And those are walk to school schemes. Now give me a second on this one, because I know on the first glance they seem like a great idea. The reason I became aware of them was because a close family member of mine who is in school came over to ours one day after school and had badges on her uniform that were shaped like feet with pictures in them, and she explained that you get a badge for walking to school. Get healthier, save the environment, reduce the amount of cars on the road, yay, this is all great. But the first thing that came to my mind was a conversation that I had had recently with another friend whose child has PDA, which I won't go into what that is in this video. You can look into that, but it stands for pathological demand avoidance, and myself, I don't know enough about it to give you any insight, but all I know is it is often seen in children with autism, and her child in particular really struggles to walk places. And I just thought of her child in the school system, who isn't actually in the school system, but that's by the by. There'll be a lot of children who fit that profile who will never get access to getting any of these badges that they see adorning their friends' clothes. For a lot of people with autism, from what I understand, planning and making a journey anywhere can cause overwhelming psychological distress. So while we can celebrate efforts to improve the environment and increase physical activities, which I wholeheartedly celebrate, I believe that placing this so visibly in the hands of children is completely wrong, and only sets to further other children who cannot manage to do many of the daily activities that we take for granted, who are already using up their full capacity just getting mentally into school, let alone having to be reminded that there are other children who are finding this a whole lot easier than them and being rewarded for it. And this is one stream of why I think walk to school schemes are damaging. And the second reason why I think these are not normal and damaging is because they are wholly based on extrinsic rather than intrinsic motivation. It is the badges that I specifically have a problem with, I suppose, in that it's encouraging children to walk to school to get a badge. It is not encouraging them to be intrinsically driven to care about the environment or their own physical fitness. And you know, my boy Alfie Cohn, who I often quote on this channel, talks about this a lot, this difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and why ultimately children are punished by being rewarded for things, by being rewarded extrinsically for completing tasks. And just to highlight my point, I'm going to have a quick look at the video that is on the Living Streets website where they interview children about the success of this scheme. Just do my little normal reaction, shift to the side.
Getting a badge at the end of a month because you can show that you have walked to school has been hugely motivational for them.
So they've been motivated to do it by getting a badge. She's very clear about that.
So enthusiastic.
It makes me feel a bit more excited that I might be getting a badge.
I like collecting the badges too because every time you can like show your friends and parents and that.
So we're all going to get these badges and show our friends and parents our badges. I've still not heard any mention of the environment or physical health.
This one is for the winter. First we got this in January because it was very cold. I think she's got the most badges.
There we go, like we're instantly comparing the amount of badges that someone's got. Another thing that Alfie would have something to say about is the competition that this has created, and I'm sure that was no intention at all, but it has created an element of who has the most badges that some children are just not even going to become players in for reasons that are no fault of their own or even of their parents.
And they really like to show that they come a healthy way.
Yeah, it's really easy to do because we have our interactive whiteboards.
You have loads of people's names and you have a little picture as well. So you click on yours and there would be options to like walk, park and stride bike.
So not only are we doing this, but the children are having to click in front of the whole class on a ginormous board how they made it into school. Like that makes me feel like super uncomfortable just thinking about that. So if we're elevating walking to school, which don't get me wrong, like we should try and walk places more, but if we're elevating that as in that's the way you get a badge, and then you're making children go in front of the whole classroom on a massive screen and potentially click that they didn't walk to school, and kids are smart, they know then that that means that that was the lesser thing to do, and they're having to display it in front of the whole class. It's the same as like behaviour charts in schools where your picture gets moved up and down or your name gets written on the board when you don't behave in the appropriate way. Like that sort of thing just makes me deeply uncomfortable because there's the shame element to it. Like, look, everyone, I didn't walk to school, which we've all been told is the best thing to do, and we're all getting rewarded for it. Just something to think about. So whilst I deeply care about the environment and the amount of pollution on the road and the safety of my children, and I'm trying to walk more places, like as a mum of 3, I'm never going to be the first to criticise other parents for driving their children places because I know how hard it is to transport children even a short way. Like a 10-minute journey up the road, you're looking at half an hour minimum. And I just applaud any parents that manage to get their children into school no matter which way. And I think to be pushing the responsibility of doing better for the environment onto parents who are just trying to make it through the day, I can't get on board with that. Like, there are many other ways that we can improve the well-being of our environment, and I do try and teach that to my children. So yeah, my problem with this walk to school scheme malarkey is twofold. One, that it discriminates against people with hidden disabilities and sets children in competition against each other for something that's completely out of their control. And 2, it's the problem with this extrinsic reward system. And that leads me on to my second normalised school thing that is actually having negative effects. Another one that has been around a long time and seen as completely normal. You will know this one: reading schemes. Reading incentives, reading rewards, whatever you want to call it. I know these are still going on. I've heard directly from people with children in schools who are part of these reading schemes. We are talking, once a child reads a certain number of books, they get free cinema tickets. That seems to be a popular one right now. They get a certificate. They get, I'm sure there's a badge involved at some point. The schools love a badge. I have seen an example online of a school who, if a class collectively, which is also another problem, reaches a reading goal, they get extra playtime. I know, it's so wrong. I feel like I need to insert Toto Wolff right now.
No, Maggie, no, Maggie, it was so not right.
It's not right. If you're a Formula One fan, you will get that. Sorry. And apparently in the States, there was a reading scheme by Pizza Hut where if children read a certain amount of books, they would get free slices of pizza. I don't know what to do with that information. Let's process it. In fact, let's get Alfie in to explain this one because he will do a better job than me.
Right. So the Pizza Hut company came up with a program many years ago called Book It, in which kids get a free slice of pizza for every so many books that they read. And I remember talking to a researcher who originally from New Zealand named John Nichols. And I said, you're one of the experts on this. What's your guess as to the likely effects of this program? And he said, my guess is a lot of fat kids who don't like to read.
Apologies to any New Zealanders who were just offended by that. We all know that's exactly how people from New Zealand sound.
I can still hear his voice saying that. If you wanted to destroy children's love of reading, you would give them a prize for reading a book.
If you wanted to destroy children's love of reading, then you would give them a prize for reading a book. Now, obviously, I try and do my research around here, and I had to look into who this John Nichols chap was, and basically he wasn't a researcher into reading specifically, but he was a researcher into achievement and motivation, and he came up with something called the achievement goal theory in circa 1984 by the looks of it. So he was all about achievement and motivation, what motivates people to achieve certain things. But if we just bring it back to the UK for a minute, I wanted to highlight a blog from Ruth Miskin, who is apparently an authority on phonics and reading teaching in the UK. I think it looks like she came up with the Read, Write, Ink scheme, which I've been learning about recently has its pitfalls, but that's by the by. She has a blog post called Please Don't Pay Children to Read, and whether that be in the form of certificates, stickers, points, or cinema tickets, she argues that offering a reward to children that has to be earned suggests to children, counterintuitively perhaps, that at an early age that reading is an unpleasant task that they have to be bribed to do. Children should read because they love reading, not because they are getting rewarded for it. And this goes back to Alfie's punish by rewards. We are extrinsically motivating children to read and not developing the intrinsic motivation that will lead to a love of reading that we so often talk about, that we want to instill a love of reading in children. Yes, children may read 8 books in 8 weeks. In that respect, if that's what you're looking for, the scheme and the incentives have worked. But is this going to create children who are lifelong readers and do it for their own pleasure or because they want to go out and find answers to something that they intrinsically want to find out about? You know, I absolutely love reading now as an adult, but I didn't develop that love of reading until my 30s. Previously, I hated reading. I thought of myself as not a reader. I don't think I ever finished one of the books that was set in school. So I'm reading this book at the moment. It is called The Balancing Act, an evidence-based approach to teaching phonics, reading and writing. This was written in 2024 by 2 experts in the field of reading. Like, they have analysed all of the research. Let me show you if you can see. All these systematic reviews, meta-analysis, all the real deal they have analysed, and not once have they said, in order to teach children to read and to love reading, give them cinema tickets. Children have to understand why learning to read will be important in their lives. So we don't have to invoke children's natural curiosity in books most of the time. We have to try and avoid dampening it. And the other point I have to make about this again is, what about the children?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
For whom reading is a real struggle. Children who have dyslexia or other hidden disabilities that make reading for them something that they have to really work at, and aren't going to be able to go home every night after the school that's strained them and tick off, I've read at home so the rest of my class can have extra playtime. And imagine if you're that one child struggling to read at home and the rest of the class identifies that you're the reason that they haven't reached their 80% quota of children reading, and thus they're missing out on extra playtime or extra rewards in whatever form they can be. I don't think I need to really talk through what the consequences of that could be. So really, I'm just trying to get the discussion going to open our eyes to see that these reading incentives that are considered so normal in schools actually aren't normal and are actually often detrimental. And if you will allow me to move on to other normalised school awards that are in fact damaging, can we please talk about attendance awards? This has been going on since I was at school. I vividly remember you would get certain awards for your percentage of attendance. I'm pretty sure at my secondary school, if you had 100% attendance, you would get to go up in assembly and be rewarded with a certificate and a mug, a school branded mug. But anyway, we have got to stop normalising never taking a day off and rewarding children for never taking a day off school. Let's get into this one. I can already feel my heart rate increasing. Now, when I was trying to research into what sort of awards children are getting at schools for attendance these days, and attendance awards do seem quite common still, so I found one saying that all children at someone's school who get 100% attendance get a day trip out with ice cream, and obviously similar sort of things like certificates and points, etc. But I actually found it quite hard to find this information amongst the deluge of articles saying why attendance awards are such a bad idea. So I think a lot of people are coming around to this notion now that we shouldn't be rewarding children for attendance and promoting this idea that it's a good thing never to have a day off. And I almost feel like I don't even have to go into much of an explanation on this one. Like, we've seen the effects of toxic productivity and hustle culture and mental health in the workplace. A lot of companies now are giving employees mental health days that they can take without explanation, and yet this hasn't seemed to transfer to our most vulnerable people. And I'd love to hear if you have a child in school, if you're a parent, if your child's school still do these attendance awards, and what your thoughts are about it. Obviously this coincides as well with fines for taking your children out of school, which I understand are getting a lot more serious now, and that awful government scheme recently encouraging parents to push their children into school when they don't feel well or they're having a bit of a wobble. You know, there are countless reasons why these attendance awards are counterproductive and even damaging. Let's talk first, as we have with the other 2 points so far, about it being unfair to children with special educational needs, with hidden disabilities, with mental health conditions, who find it a struggle to attend school at all, let alone every single day. And because of this, they are missing out on the treats that all the other students who are able to attend school are receiving. It also maybe inadvertently encourages children to ignore their physical and mental needs and prioritise attending school over their own well-being. And this is something that I believe really extends into adulthood and has led to so many adults getting burnt out. There was an article in Education Week in 2023 which said that perfect attendance awards encourage students to come to school even when they are not feeling well, either mentally or physically. And it went on to say that attendance awards aren't even effective in motivating children to go to school and are not equitable to students of all backgrounds. They've even had had a professor from Harvard researching school attendance, and in research published in 2018, they actually discovered a demotivating effect of attendance awards. So not only are they encouraging children to ignore their own health, promoting a culture of no days off, but they are actually having the opposite of the intended effect and demotivating students when it comes to attendance. So I don't think I need to go too much more into this normalised school thing. To me, this one seems like a no-brainer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave me a comment and we can discuss if you have opposing views. So as you can tell, all these three normalised school things have common undercurrents in that they are largely at worst discriminating against children with neurodivergence or other disabilities, and at best not equitable to children of different backgrounds. But they are also all largely based on rewarding behaviours extrinsically and encouraging extrinsic motivation over intrinsic motivation, which may work in the short term to achieve goals such as reading 8 books in 8 weeks, walking to school once a week, and attending school even when you really don't feel like it. But what I want everyone just to think about are, what are the long-term effects of these incentives? Are they working long term to foster in our children when they are adults that it is okay to take a day off work sometimes? A love of reading can be really important in growing your mind and your experiences and your knowledge as an adult and as a child. But also, reading is not the be all and end all. We have access to so many learning resources now, and a deep intrinsic love of reading doesn't even have to stop you from accessing enjoyment and knowledge and experiences that are available to us in other formats. And are these walk to school schemes encouraging our children as future adults to really care about the environment and their own physical health? I'll leave you to come at me in the comments for all of those. And I have a whole lot of more bullet points on my list down here that I might or might not go into in another video. But if you are interested to see what my other points were in that last video, then you can check it out here, and I will see you next time. F*** it. Oh, what must my neighbours think?